I figured out how to make AI teach you anything so fast it feels illegal. And before you roll your eyes and tell me you already use AI to study, let me stop you right there. Because what you are doing right now is almost certainly making you dumber. Not smarter, dumber. You are pasting text into a chat box and asking it to summarize things for you. You are reading the output, nodding along, thinking to yourself, yeah, I get this now, and then closing the tab feeling satisfied. And in 48 hours, 75% of that information is gone. Completely gone. Not a little fuzzy. Clinically, statistically, neurologically gone. And the reason is not that you have a bad memory. The reason is that you are using the most powerful learning technology ever built in the dumbest possible way. Here's the hard truth. Everything you were taught about how to study is a scam, not a metaphorical scam, a literal architectural failure rooted in a 19th century industrial model that was never designed to make you smart. It was designed to process large numbers of students efficiently. Those are not the same goal, and the data proves it. Hermann Ebbinghaus figured this out in 1885. He spent years memorizing meaningless syllables and tracking exactly how fast his brain deleted them. What he found was an exponential decay curve so brutal it should make you question every hour you have ever spent highlighting a textbook. Look at the numbers. 20 minutes after you learn something, you have already forgotten 42% of it. After 1 hour, 56% gone. After 9 hours, 64%. After 24 hours, 67%. After 48 hours, 75%. Three-quarters of everything in that lecture, that chapter, that YouTube video you watched thinking you were being productive, gone in 2 days. Mathematically, reliably, every single time. And here's the part that makes it even worse. The traditional classroom does not just fail to stop this decay. It actively makes you believe you are learning when you are not. When you reread your notes or highlight a passage or watch someone explain a concept clearly, your brain experiences something called perceptual fluency. The information feels easy to process, it flows, and your brain mistakes that ease of processing for actual understanding. It feels like you know it. You do not know it. You have just read it recently enough that the recognition feels familiar. The moment the exam puts the concept in a slightly different context, or the moment 2 days pass and the decay curve does its job, you discover there was nothing there. You built your confidence on an illusion. That is the scam. The school system is built on an illusion, and almost no one is talking about it. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because in 1984, an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom cracked open the data and found something that should have changed everything. He compared three groups of students. One group was taught in the conventional classroom model. One group received what he called mastery learning in a group setting, and one group received one-to-one individual tutoring using mastery-based methods. The results were not a marginal improvement. They were a different category of human performance entirely. The conventional classroom students finished right at the 50th percentile, average, expected, exactly what the system produces. The mastery learning group bumped up to the 84th percentile, better. The one-to-one tutoring group landed at the 98th percentile, two full standard deviations above the control group. Bloom called this the 2 sigma problem, not because he found a solution, because he could not find a scalable one. The jump from average to the 98th percentile was real, but it required a personal tutor, and personal tutors cost between $50 and $150 an hour, so this cheat code was, historically, reserved for the children of billionaires and the intellectual elite. If your parents could afford elite tutoring throughout your entire education, you had a neurobiological advantage that had nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with access. That is what the 2 sigma problem actually means. It is not a discovery about learning, it is a discovery about inequality disguised as a pedagogical finding. But in 2024, researchers at Harvard University decided to test whether AI had finally solved the scalability problem Bloom could not crack in 1984. Gregory Keston and Kelly Miller ran a randomized controlled trial with 194 physics students. One group was taught by the best active learning human instructors available. The other group was tutored by an AI using Socratic methods. The AI group achieved more than double the learning gains of the human classroom group, and they did it spending 20% less time on the material. The p-value was less than 10 to the negative 8th power. For context, that is so statistically airtight, it is essentially impossible to explain away as a fluke. The AI tutored students also rated their engagement and motivation higher than the human taught students. They learned more, faster, and enjoyed it more. This is the 2 Sigma effect, finally democratized. Not a $50 per hour tutor, not $150 an hour. An AI system available around the clock for a fraction of the cost that can deliver the cognitive conditions Bloom identified as the highest known benchmark for human learning performance. But, and this is the critical part you are about to mess up if I do not stop you here, you do not get any of this by asking AI to summarize things for you. None of it, zero. In fact, asking AI to feed you predigested answers is not just neutral, it is actively working against the biological mechanism that creates mastery in the first place. Let me explain what is actually happening inside your skull when you learn something properly. Every skill, every piece of knowledge, every concept you have ever truly mastered is represented in your brain as a chain of neurons firing in a specific sequence. And wrapped around those nerve fibers is a substance called myelin. Myelin is a fatty insulating sheath, like the rubber coating on a copper wire, and it does the same thing rubber does on a wire. It prevents signal leakage. It increases the speed and precision of the electrical impulse traveling down that nerve chain. Neuroscientist R. Douglas Fields spent his career studying myelin and concluded it is the holy grail of skill acquisition. The thickness of your myelin sheaths on a specific neural circuit is the biological hardware of your competence. A thick myelin sheath means the signal travels fast and clean. Thin or absent myelin means slow, leaky, unreliable signal. Beginner versus expert, struggling versus automatic. And here's the part you need to tattoo on your brain. Myelin does not grow from easy learning. It grows from struggle, specifically from firing a neural circuit correctly under conditions of effortful, focused, high-friction practice. Glia cells, which are the maintenance crew of your nervous system, monitor neural activity. When they detect a circuit being fired correctly and repeatedly under high cognitive load, they respond by wrapping additional layers of myelin around those axons. The struggle is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. The struggle is the biological signal that tells your nervous system this circuit matters. Insulate it, make it permanent. When you ask AI to just explain this to me or summarize this chapter, you are consuming pre-processed output. Your brain recognizes the information passively, your perceptual fluency kicks in, you feel like you learned something, and zero myelin gets built. The biological trigger was never activated. You read, you nodded, you closed the tab, and your brain filed the whole interaction under temporary noise and began deleting it within the hour. This is why Robert and Elizabeth Bjork spent decades studying what they called desirable difficulties. The concept is simple and brutal. Learning conditions that feel easy produce weak, short-lived memory traces. Learning conditions that feel hard, frustrating, and effortful produce strong, durable, transferable memory. The Bjorks found that the activities which feel like the best learning in the moment produce the worst long-term retention, and the activities which feel the most difficult and uncomfortable in the moment produce the best long-term retention. The data table is stark. When you are spoon-fed answers, your perception of learning is high. Your actual long-term retention is low. Your myelin growth is negligible. When you are Socratically interrogated, forced to retrieve information, forced to construct your own explanation, forced to identify your own errors, your perception of learning is low. It feels frustrating, you feel like you are not getting anywhere, but your actual long-term retention is high and your myelin growth is maximal. You need to completely reconfigure how you are using AI. Stop treating it like a search engine with better grammar. Start treating it like a ruthless tutor whose entire job is to refuse to let you take the easy path. Here's the specific framework. When you open an AI chat to study anything, your first message should not be a question about the subject. Your first message should be a set of instructions that reprogram the AI entirely. Tell it this: you are a Socratic tutor. Your goal is to help me deeply understand this topic. You are prohibited from giving me the answer to anything. You may only ask probing questions that expose the gaps in my thinking. Start by asking me the minimum number of questions needed to identify my current level of understanding. Do not summarize. Do not explain, only interrogate. That instruction changes everything. Instead of the AI collapsing your uncertainty into a clean, readable answer that your brain will passively absorb and forget, it forces you to externalize your thinking. It asks you what you already know, finds the gaps, and then asks you questions that push directly into those gaps. You have to construct the answer yourself. You have to retrieve, assemble, and articulate. And every time you do that, even when you get it wrong, especially when you get it wrong, you are firing and strengthening neural circuits in a way that passive reading never touches. And when you do get something wrong, this is where the AI delivers something a classroom of 30 students can never receive. Immediate, personalized, corrective feedback targeted at your specific misconception. Not a general explanation, not the same answer it would give everyone else. A response that identifies exactly where your logic broke down and forces you to re-reason that specific step rather than just reading the correct answer and moving on. Research by Roediger and Butler demonstrated that feedback after a retrieval attempt is the ultimate accelerant for memory encoding. But not all feedback is equal. Answer-only feedback helps. Correct or incorrect feedback with the answer helps more. But personalized Socratic feedback, where the AI identifies your specific misconception and refuses to close the reasoning loop until you have worked through it yourself, is the most potent form of memory encoding available. Because you are not memorizing a correction, you are rebuilding the neural pathway that produced the error. There is a study on Socratic AI chatbots that showed students who learned through Socratic interrogation were preferred 64% more often on difficult reasoning tasks than students who used standard step-by-step AI explanations. Not because the Socratic students felt smarter in the moment, they actually reported feeling more frustrated during the process. But their actual transfer of knowledge to new problems, which is the only thing that matters in any real-world application, was dramatically superior. What you are building when you use AI as a Socratic tutor is not just knowledge. It is the biological hardware to deploy that knowledge automatically under pressure in unfamiliar contexts. That is mastery. And mastery is built exclusively through productive struggle. The AI is not the cheat code. The struggle you are engineering with the AI is the cheat code. Because here is the final equation. Traditional passive studying produces 75% information loss in 48 hours, leaves your neural circuits unmyelinated, and delivers you to the 50th percentile. AI-driven Socratic tutoring more than doubles learning gains, cuts study time by 20% according to the Harvard data, builds the Myelin architecture of genuine skill, and delivers the 98th percentile cognitive environment that for all of human history, only the wealthiest people on Earth had access to. The school system kept this from you by accident. The technology to fix it has existed for less than 5 years, and most people using it are still just asking it to summarize things for them. Stop being dumb. Configure your AI to interrogate you. And if you share this with one person who is still highlighting textbooks and wondering why nothing is sticking, you might just save them years.